Hello, and welcome to my presentation on unions and management. We're going to take a deep dive at Starbucks as a company here. So here we go. First, we're going to detail the 8 dimensions of being most admired as defined by Fortune magazine. These include innovativeness, quality of management, long-term investment, social responsibility, people management, quality of products and services, financial soundness, and wise use of corporate assets. Today, for the intent behind this presentation, is we are only going to look at people management and financial soundness. With financial soundness, we will touch on in this presentation. However, the main focus is going to be people management and the opportunity for Starbucks Coffee Corporation. So a little bit of context here, Starbucks is trying to unionize. So the timeline of events is there was a location in Buffalo, New York, that petitioned to unionize based on working conditions. This was in August 2021. In December of 2021, we actually see that the Buffalo location is the first union to be formed at a Starbucks corporate store. And now we find ourselves in January, around 24 of Starbucks, nearly 9,000 US corporate stores have filed for an individual union election since workers at the first Buffalo store petitioned to unionize. So this represents several hundred of the workers, 230,000 US store employees, about 35,000, or no, out of the chain's 235 US store employees, sorry. So about, and that accounts for 35,000 of the chain's licensed stores. So we see that this is starting to form, and it hasn't picked up a lot of speed just quite yet. It's kind of like, okay, the fire is starting, it hasn't spread. So really the objective here is we want to stop that fire from spreading. Let me elaborate. So Starbucks is underperforming in people management, obviously. I mean, why would they be unionizing if they weren't suffering in people management? So how does this push for unionization relate to Starbucks people management? Just a couple of citations. The 2 area stores in Buffalo voted to unionize because they wanted to protest conditions due to COVID-19. So there's that. They didn't feel like they were being heard, obviously. So they said, we're just going to join a union, unionize. Also, there's an example of Maggie Carter, this Starbucks barista in Knoxville, and she said once she heard about the Buffalo store unionizing, she began to kind of research it, and she felt that, you know, she wanted to unionize specifically because Starbucks was far removed from the daily operations, the corporate store. There was some disconnect there. So basically, working conditions have caused Starbucks to unionize, and this relates directly to people management. So let's deep dive into what the ramifications are. Starbucks' poor people management is already leading to unionization campaigns across the nation. Again, not really a huge push, but this is a fire that we want to put out before it spreads. This is going to spell out trouble for the company. Unionization can lead to financial issues. This is where we kind of touch on financial health just a little bit. Labor unionization is negatively associated with stock price crash risk. And it says, you know, workers demand higher wages, additional benefits, and improved working conditions to compensate for the unemployment risk, which increases the riskiness of future cash flows. So that's just kind of a little bit of background on, you know, maybe why these workers are wanting to unionize. So Starbucks' response has been they'll respect the union election process, but they simultaneously are negotiating with stores who successfully do unionize. Starbucks' whole position is, you know, we kind of want to be one in this together. We don't need a union between us. So that's kind of what they've been quoted saying here. We do better together as partners. that's what they call their employees, without a union between us, and that conviction has not changed. So while yes, they are cooperating with this process, not ideal for them as a company. So let's take a little bit of a deep dive into the background of Starbucks, the organizational design. Just a couple of key notes here. The division of labor. There is a clear division of labor between each store. Employees are dedicated to a different station on the retail floor. That might include taking orders, warming pastries, or making coffee. Those are kind of the three main things, and then drive-throughs, so on and so forth. The span of control with Starbucks is narrow. There is a small number of employees reporting to one supervisor per store. The hierarchy follows a functional hierarchy. Employees are grouped based on their business function. So we've got the retail, those are kind of like boots on the ground. Those are your baristas, your shift supervisors, your store managers. Then we go up one level to the regional managers, which usually sit within an office, a corporate store, and they make regular visits to the store. And then you've got your basic functions. We've got HR, finance, so on and so forth at the corporate level based in Seattle. The formalization is high. Starbucks leads in training. They've actually gotten a lot of kudos for their training and kind of how they choose to formalize their rules, what they expect of their partners, so on and so forth. So I would say that it's high. The centralization is decentralized. Each store manager has authority to make decisions. Starbucks does offer a lot of flexibility since each store's needs are going to be unique. So that's just a little bit of context into the organizational design of Starbucks. So let's take it a step further. How does Starbucks embody that conscious culture that we talk about? Well, their higher purpose goes straight to their mission statement. They want to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, one neighborhood at a time. I think that pretty much spells it out as to what their mission is. Now, again, our whole thing behind or objective behind this presentation is they're trying to unionize. So are they really living that out? We'll see. Stakeholder orientation for employees, they earn higher wages with them actually reported, I think going up in June of 2022, they'll be at $22 an hour. Arizona State University has partnered with Starbucks to offer partners free tuition to complete their bachelor's degree. And Starbucks has been one of the pioneers in offering their part-time employees health benefits. So that's one of the main things that you hear about all the time from Starbucks. That's how they really take care of their people. Customers, they believe in providing consistent, high quality service and products, pretty high level. Suppliers, they are really into providing fair compensation for their coffee farmers. And that kind of ties into investors, global expansion, and high domination of the coffee industry. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that doesn't know what Starbucks is. So I think they're definitely leading that, and that's good for their investors. So how do they embody conscious leadership? It's all through inspirational leadership, geared towards kind of motivating employee and cultivating new ideas and skills. And that's really birthed out of former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz. I know I can personally speak from this. I worked for Starbucks when he was CEO over a decade ago. And he really does, embody that of a conscious leader. He puts his people first. He's a people person, so on and so forth. So yeah, I think that kind of explains that. And the conscious culture, Starbucks is all about corporate social responsibility. They're all about being sustainable. Their cups are recyclable. And one thing as a former partner that I thought was really inspiring was at the end of the night, the unsold pastries that we had to mark out. Starbucks does believe in, again, here we go, quality of service and products. So pastries were delivered fresh every morning. And at the end of the day, those would be marked out, the ones that we didn't sell. Well, instead of going into the trash, Starbucks donates all of their unused food to homeless shelters. So I think that's a great way that they kind of embody conscious culture. They really lean into the corporate social responsibility. Now let's talk about the change. Let's talk about, okay, we've talked about, who Starbucks is, how they embody conscious culture. We've also talked about the area of opportunity that lies within people management that is now leading to this unionization. So let's talk about now the solution. Cotter's 8-step change plan. So just kind of a quick overview: create a sense of urgency, build a guiding coalition, form a strategic vision and initiative, enlist a volunteer army, enable action by removing barriers, generate short-term wins, sustain acceleration, and institute change. So that's kind of that model we're going to follow here for the next slide in a nutshell, and what we're proposing that change is. So we're going to create a sense of urgency. The sense of urgency is really on our side here, as Starbucks stores are starting to elect to unionize. As I've said many times, we are early in this. We got to stop the bleed. So that's the sense of urgency right there. It would be helpful to and this kind of falls in line with some of the other ones, but it would be helpful to communicate the downfall, that this could create. Again, we go back to the cash flow risk of forming a union. We're going to build a guiding coalition. How are we going to do that? Well, right now, Starbucks is sending regional managers out on kind of a speaking tour to actively listen to partners' concerns. However, I don't believe that this is enough. Regional managers do show face at stores. I will say that as a former partner, but I feel like we need to get more people behind this. I elect that we bring in mental health experts. Maybe if we brought in some psychologists or counselors, or we provided that for these employees to kind of voice their concerns, that way they're not getting a suit regional manager. Maybe their regional manager is empathetic, but maybe a mental health expert would be more empathetic and be able to kind of bridge the gap there. Form a strategic vision and initiative. Actions speak louder than words. We know that. So Starbucks needs to take feedback from their partners. They need to develop a plan, and they need to hold themselves accountable to that plan. Pretty straightforward there. Enlist a volunteer army. We need to start a movement on, like I said, bridging the gap between the stores, boots on the ground, right, and the corporate entity, the corporation, right? There's no need for a union to get in between Starbucks and their stores when these employees feel seen and heard, and that leans into people management. Enable action by removing barriers. We need to work closely with partners and managers to eliminate any inefficient processes. We need to not be afraid to speak up. If something isn't working, we need to say, this isn't working. Let's change it. So let's figure out what those barriers are, and let's get them out of here. Generate short-term wins, track progress, employee recognition. I know personally for me, when I worked at Starbucks, we had a pretty okay employee recognition. We had little cards that you could say like, hey, you did great today, here's this, and you could collect them and get badges, and it leaned into the 5 guiding principles of Starbucks. What those were over a decade ago, I don't remember. However, I feel like more employee recognition would be beneficial, because I haven't worked at Starbucks in over a decade, but based on this whole move for unionization, maybe these employees aren't feeling recognized. Sustain acceleration. Keep what is working, ditch what isn't. That's pretty straightforward. Let's accelerate this, and let's just leave all the barriers behind. And then last but not least, institute change. Nip complaints in the bud and be on a constant listening tour. I know I spoke to this, the regional managers are kind of on one right now. We need more. We need to create more traction here. And we need to create a safe space for open dialogue. So that kind of goes within the, open communication and maybe bringing in the mental health expert. They all kind of coincide together. Well, you can't have change without possible roadblocks. So let's talk about that. The current staffing crisis that this country is facing right now is going to prove to be a roadblock for sure. I think that maybe has to do with why these employees don't feel seen and heard, is because they're having to work long hours. There's not enough staff to cover. That's something that is just kind of the thing right now. However, if we step back and we look at just generally, resource allocation is probably going to be a roadblock. Having to hire more part-time work, and resources are stretched thin. that's gonna cause some tension, I believe. And then the individual belief that some employees just like the comfort and security of doing things the same way that they've always done them. And this is no different than Starbucks. I mean, personal example, the store that I worked at had 2 employees that had been there for 20 years. And they weren't changing their ways. Like they definitely were stuck in old Starbucks because they had been there for 20 years. They were veterans. They didn't want to change. So we need to kind of promote the change as it's not scary, and say, hey, like, change is good and it's inevitable. I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to talk about how to manage those challenges next. We're going to start small. We're going to work out the details. We're going to show the benefits of change to those who might resist. Basically what I was just saying on the last slide. We're going to secure top management support. It's all about support. We have to get the dominant coalition on the side of change. We have to get everybody aligned to this, and we have to get the higher ups to align to it first and foremost. What I've been saying this whole time: foster open communication, create a place that makes employees feel seen, heard, safe to share their feedback. And back to this too, reward those who contribute to the change. So we need more recognition, we need more rewards, and we need, once we get everybody on board to say, hey, union probably isn't the best way to go, we need to really build that coalition and get people behind us. And like I said, start this movement and say, hey, union isn't the way. Let's just open up our ears a little bit more here and see if we can't learn. Lesson learned. I love this citation right here. A single person with clarity of conscience and willingness to speak up can make a difference. I truly believe that. So contributing to the greater good is deep and fundamental human need. 100%. When a leader, even a mid-level or lower level leader, skillfully brings a voice and a vision, others will follow, and surprising things can happen, even culture change on a large scale. Love that, because that's the lesson here, right? We need to be able to speak up. Something obviously needs to change here. So personally, one of my main values is speaking up when something isn't right, even if it's hard, which I know is easier said than done in many instances. When a company is facing potential unionization, it really does speak volumes, is the lack of communication or representation within employees. So that's the problem we're facing here. And this is why open communication and empathy are essential to being a successful manager. So these are the traits, the things that you need to take with you if you're going to manage efficiently. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for your time.